Good morning, everybody. All of a sudden, I feel like being a pinch hitter. As you know, pinch hitter does two things well. The first is either he hits a home run or he strikes out. And I hope I'm not the one who will strike out today, talking about Korean miracle with you, and whether Korean miracle will change North Korea in the future. If Dr. Bruce Cummings were here, his introduction on Korean history would have made my presentation a little bit easier to understand. But yet, I think you will kind of enjoy my presentation as well without that precursor of Korean history. The reason is, being an economics professor, you kind of present things and then try to make it as difficult as possible so that no one will question me later on. But today I changed my strategy. I said, this is a very friendly crowd. Rather than making it very academical, I would like to make it very kind of subjective and kind of somewhat qualitative so that we don't have to worry about the numbers or we don't have to worry about academic quality of the presentation and all that. So many of you who are being forced to be in this classroom because maybe your professors have told you to be here, it's time to relax because I'm not going to give you a quiz or anything like this at the end of my presentation. So it's time to just relax and enjoy what I have to say today. I feel that a lot of people still do not know about Korea. And Korea is known as the land of morning calm. And the reason why the word morning calm sticks out when somebody talks about Korea is it's because of it used to be a very, very peaceful country, bothering no one, just minding their own business. But over the years, its history has been really, really dramatically changed. So if you go to Korea now, you will see the old palaces, and it looks quite serene. It's quite comfortable, and it's peaceful. And you will see a lot of, not many buildings of old days because they were destroyed during the Korean War, but you will still see some of the nice palace buildings and so forth. But yet, Korea is not globally known, despite some of the things. So first question that I have here is, do you know where Korea is? And you can clearly see that it's a small dot on the map on the globe. And if you look at closely, that Korean peninsula is halved because north side is occupied by the communistic North Korea, and south part is occupied by democratic South Korea. So it's a small country, and yet it's divided into two halves. How big is Korea then? Let's think about it for a second. And Illinois is about 58,000 square miles, big. And the South Korea is about 39,000, so it's about 2/3 of Illinois. And in comparison to North Korea to Illinois, North Korea is about 4/5 of Illinois. So if you do the math quickly, it comes out to be about 1.5 times of Illinois. So overall, it's not a very big country. Looking at the U.S., it's really tiny, tiny country. But here is one of the things that people often confused. So I was going to ask this as a kind of pop quiz without being graded. But somebody gave a big hint, so I'm upset. You see right here, there is a hint. So I don't know, maybe there's some kind of conspiration going on, So anyway, the answer is out. And if you look, there are various, flags here. And this one is Chinese flag. This is North Korean flag. And this is a well-known Japanese flag. And that's Korean flag. It's kind of cluttered, but it has a lot of meanings to it. And I unfortunately do not have the time to go through that, but many Koreans are very proud of this flag. Now, here comes the famous word. What comes to your mind when you hear about Korea? And a lot of things, I'm sure. So I listed some that at least came to my mind. Many Americans think about Korean War when they hear the word Korea. They also hear about this heartless dictator living in North Korea. Also, many poor and starving people in North Korea. And somehow in the background, they hear that one of those two countries, one of those two Koreas, have some kind of economic miracle. And so they hear about that, but not quite sure. And then they also hear Samsung, Hyundai, Kia, LG, and other famous Korean corporations who are selling their products in the States now. But most importantly, recently, among young people, you heard about Psy's Gangnam Style? Is he famous? This is the guy. And my wife tells me that if I put the same sunglasses on my face, I'll be just like him. But here's the problem. I can do this. Actually, I could have all of you stand and dance with me, but that may be too early for the morning. Actually, this is the picture that I took in the Korean subway last summer when I was there. He is almost idolized. So this is a mural that somebody painted on the Korean subway, and people go over there and almost worship it because you see Gangnam Style being played, and there is Psy dancing. Now, when you hear this, what do you really, think about Korea? So first of all, I want to show you what Gangnam looks like right now, so that at least you know why this is so popular. Okay, just a few pictures. Look at the size of buildings. Do you see something similar to Chicago? Another view. Another view. This is where party occurs. This is Seoul, Gangnam. I show you this because it's quite stunning, because not many people had gone there, and not many people actually seen these kind of pictures. But they heard of Korea being an economic miracle. So I just wanted to share with you of that. But this was not the case about 60 years ago. And some of you would remember 60 years ago we had a Korean War. So let's have a very quick history review. Between 1910 and 1945, Japan occupied Korea, and literally they pillaged all the Korean resources because they had to fight World War II. So Korea was devastated by Japanese ruling. But then after 5 years since then, we had Korean War in 1950 through 1953. It was a 3-year war. But the sad thing is, you can see that 5 million people died. And then you can see 40,000 American soldiers died in Korea fighting the North Korean communists. And over 100,000 people were injured. I know that this might be just a number, but if you look at this was a terrible cost to the Korean peninsula. And I will show you some gruesome pictures, so any of you who don't have the heart to watch it, you can close your eyes. This was the war scene in 1950 that American soldiers were going through Seoul that you saw just now. You see the difference between that Seoul versus this Seoul? You see the dead people lining up, and they were trying to bury them. But before they bury, they have to identify whom they are burying. It's row after row of dead people. This was Korean War. Mothers and sisters and grandmothers were crying for the dead people. They were trying to identify. It's hard to see, but there were many orphans. No place to go. Look at the background. Just nothing there. This young kid sitting on just a wood panel, and then just waiting for somebody to come by to help. When I look at this picture, it reminds me of my old days because that's where I grew up. This is like my mother with my brothers and sisters. Nothing, no father, no male to be around because they were at war. or they were dead. Now, contrast that with Seoul now that you just saw. What comes to your mind? I hope the word miracle. It's truly a miracle when you think about this. And when you see the streets in South Korea, it's unbelievable. It's even busier than Russia Street here in Chicago. So young guys, when you get a time, when you have a chance, go visit Seoul and party. That's off the record, right? I'm not being taped, am I? Okay. Here's the story. What happened in Korea then after the Korean War? And there was a president named Park Chung-hee. He had a military coup in 1961 with only one major promise. He said, no more hungry people in Korea. And that was the reason why he did the coup. But some people call him still a coup leader or dictator. But some people praise him for his insight into making South Korea into a miracle. Whatever the story was behind his motive, he actually did one thing great. He borrowed $30 million in 1963 from West Germany, which was a miracle by itself because no one would lend any money to Korea, which was war-torn, and there was nothing to claim for as a collateral. So it was a miracle to borrow $30 million. And what he did with that was one of the craziest things in anyone's mind. He built an expressway going from Seoul to Busan. It is stretching from Seoul in red up here all the way down to Busan. He built expressway. And a lot of people say that that's crazy. We don't have cars. We have nothing to move around. Why would you build expressway first? So his intention was doubted a lot, and it was a political, kind of a nightmare for him. But one thing that we found out was that it made Korea as a one-day town. They can travel between Seoul and Busan in 4 hours, so they can go down to Busan, work, a few hours, and come back to Seoul. They made it into one-day thing. But what's more important is the next thing. This is an interesting story about economic development. When you have an expressway, what do you need? Obviously, you need cars to travel on. So in order to make cars available, what do you have to do? Somebody has to produce steel. At the same time, car needs gasoline, which develops into a petrochemical business. So in order to use the expressway, President Park had the insight to encourage Korean businesses to build steel industry and petrochemical industry. That's why when you hear the word Pohang steel, iron and steel, which is one of the largest steel manufacturing companies in the world. And when you hear about some of the better-known petrochemical companies, you will find them some in Korea. The next one is, if you have this automobile, somebody has to produce something to move around. So they were making goods, especially labor-intensive goods, such as shoes, clothing, and so forth. So once you produce them as such, they were able to now export to foreign countries. So if you're going to export, you need to have some kind of ocean-going transportation. So they were into shipbuilding. So Hyundai Shipbuilding is one of the largest shipbuilders in the world as of now. So you can quickly see one small idea of building an expressway in Korea really encouraged people to use that highway to their advantage. So this is what you see. And when you see products moving around, people want to communicate well, so they are good with the internet communication. So now Samsung is well known for their smartphones. And I'm sure that many of you own Samsung smartphones. It's unbelievable how small seed of an idea could spread into many sectors as such. So to some extent, people still blame President Park Chung-hee as a dictator, but to some, he's a hero of making all these economic miracles possible in Korea. What was really interesting was even though some people will say that a Korean economic miracle occurred between 1961 and 1996. However, what it brought out, or the miracle was noticed by the world, was 1988 Seoul Olympic. And through this Olympic, a lot of people came to Korea and they found out that this is no longer the war-torn country. It is truly a miracle. So the miracle on the Han River was used prevalently in the news media. And what kept this story was 2002 FIFA World Cup. That's a soccer World Cup that had occurred in Japan and in Korea simultaneously. And people came and then they truly nodded. Korea is no longer a poor country. It belongs to the one of the top. So their status as a member of OECD was kind of guaranteed and was believed. Now the question here is then, how big is South Korean economic power given this miracle on the background? And I'll just give you the numbers, and don't pay a whole lot of attention to the small numbers, but just notice the red number with the ranking on it. This is world ranking by GDP. And you can see that Korea is the 13th largest economy. But if you look at the very top, it's European Union. That's a union of a bunch of 13 or 14 countries. So if you really, kind of eliminate that one, South Korean economy is 12th largest in the world. So can we call it a miracle? Next is its government budget. The reason why I put government budget in here is because this is how much government is actually collecting from people. If people are poor, they cannot collect money, correct? Having said that, it's the 18th largest collector of taxes from people. And I'm hoping and I'm sure that they're using it for the good purposes. How big is their exporting capability? They are the 8th largest in the world. Now, who exports or how do they export so much? So here are top, the Korean companies, the top 500 global companies. And if you look at this, Samsung Electronics is the #1 ranked South Korean companies that is in the top 500 global companies list. Hyundai Motor and LG Electronics. So you can quickly see that there are 13 companies in the 500 largest global companies. So it's a big accomplishment. Now, in terms of importing, they also rank at the 8th. The point that I want to stress here is Korean economy is heavily dependent upon exports and imports. And here is one key thing. How do you succeed as an exporter and importer? You have to have a global view. And Koreans are into it very deeply. Looking at the overall per capita GDP of these three nations, US is obviously at the top. But look at the difference between Japan and Korea. You see that it's very wide around the 80s, but then it's catching up very quickly. So here is the thing. In terms of the Japanese people, they feel that they are somewhat threatened because Koreans are chasing after them in terms of their per capita GDP. At the same time, Koreans feel very confident that they are going to maybe one day outtake Japanese GDP. Now, this is a big hope and challenge. So a lot of Koreans are at this point in time working very diligently. And in fact, the current president, Park Geun-hye, promised to the people that by the time her term is over, she wants to have Korean per capita GDP reach into 40,000 territory. I don't know whether it's doable or not, but she has a target of $40,000 as a per capita GDP for South Koreans. And I hope she achieves. And if that is the case, the story between Japan and Korea might be slightly different. Now, let's talk about this. While South Korea is enjoying this kind of economic miracle, what's happening in North Korea? And I'm sure that you heard a lot about it, and I'm not going to have bad propaganda against North Korea, because I do feel that they are part of Korea. And so I just wanted to share with you some basic facts, and I'm sure that you can make your own judgment. Who's the leader? It's a third-generation dictator in power, Kim Jong-un. I don't know. I'm mean enough to pick the meanest-looking picture of him here, so my apology. I joked at my wife, he looks like my dean. Okay, that's a joke. Okay, don't text him right now, okay, please. What do? They bow to their, his father and grandfather, almost like gods. They worship them. And it's really difficult to understand for us to understand why people would worship them like this. It's just simply two reasons, in my opinion. They were trained as such, and if they do not do this, they will be punished. So they have no other option but treat them as gods. So what is the consequence of treating them as gods? They have no complaints, nothing else to do, wait for the government to pass out the food, and if they do not have the food, what is your choice? Starve. Look at the people who are starving, especially the young children. Between 1994 and 1996, when North Korea had a major drought, they lost over 2 million people, I was told. Can you imagine 2 million people? They were saying that when they were burying these people every night, they were seeing the mounds of graves happening all over the mountainside. In fact, they had a brigade whose job is to bury people. That's how North Korea was and still is to some extent. But the young kids, what do? They are told to hate USA. Why? Because USA is an invader, an occupier of South Korea, who hinders the peaceful unification between South and North Koreas. Obviously, it's a wonderful propaganda to them. And I dread the day when North Korea comes to South and make it into a communistic country and have my kids starve. It's almost unimaginable idea. But